Hello, everybody out there in Twitter. Welcome to another episode of Fighting the Void. It's me, Ginger, back here, and I have got Jeff Dornik back with me again. And we are talking about the latest collaboration that he's put together, new book called Church and State, which probably couldn't be more relevant right now, especially given that Jeff is from the People's Republic of California, where they have been very actively working on making sure that people don't get to worship in large groups unless it's in a Walmart. And and as we were just talking about before we went live, that gives you the award. At least between the two of us, you have got the worst governor. Whitmer's at least been smart enough to stay away from that particular landmine.
Yeah, I mean, we have the award. We have the award for like the most woke governor, I think, in the history of woke governors. I mean, like
Most woke, yeah.
he's so woke. He's so woke that the only way, medically speaking, to destroy coronavirus is not to worship God. Like logically, that makes sense.
I really can't think of anything more logical. The only thing I can think of that might be more logical is to make sure that Jews can't play in the park, which De Blasio's got that one covered.
Yeah. Well, but by the way, speaking of which, did you see the video that was going around? I think it was yesterday of the saloon owner out here in Sherman Oaks. Did you see that video going around?
No, I don't know that one.
So it's this lady. She owns the saloon. The saloon's been around for since the 70s or something like that.
Okay, I think I might know this one after all. I just didn't know the name, but go ahead.
Yeah, and so she filmed a video showing the utter hypocrisy of California politics.
Yep.
So she spent thousands of dollars setting up to where she can serve the people that are coming to eat and drink, whatever it is, outside. LA County says, nope, not allowed to do that anymore because of COVID-19, because we are so woke that we're not going to allow you guys to eat outside where it's perfectly safe to do so with proper social distancing, plexiglass, the whole thing.
Right.
In the same parking lot where she's not allowed to serve because it's too dangerous, they have a movie studio that has set up their dining that's 4 times the size of hers. That's safe. Hers is not safe.
Yeah, I did.
That, my friends, is science.
I saw that, and I was like, and you can hear the mix of anger and despair in her voice. I mean, I feel for that lady, and but it's people like her, the fact that they're finally making videos like that, to give me a little bit of hope that maybe we come out the other side of this thing with America still intact.
Yes.
Either
that, or let's recall Gavin Newsom altogether, get rid of him. By the way, I interviewed the guy that's heading up the Recall Gavin Newsom movement. We have 800,000 signatures. We need 1.2 million. And that's 800,000 signatures right now to recall Gavin Newsom in COVID-19, where they're not allowed to be outside getting signatures. Imagine if there wasn't COVID-19, how fast it would be. He said that when they first started this, it was in the very beginning of COVID-19, they were still able to be outside. He said in the very beginning, before all the lockdowns, they would have to sit down and explain to people, well, here's the problem with Gavin Newsom. Here's why we're trying to recall him. And people are asking questions or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden he starts doing these lockdowns, and they put up a sign saying recall Gavin Newsom, and people just come flocking.
I love it. I almost wonder if that actually plays into the recent "thou shalt not even walk outside" orders. Yeah, I wonder.
I mean, it's possible. And here's the thing. So we're down here in this little, what I always say, like a MAGA bubble. We're down here in Orange County, and so we've got the MAGA boat parades, and I've accidentally found myself driving down PCA.
Nope.
Intending it. That's how MAGA we are down here, right? But the interesting thing is that we've gone up to LA a couple times, which is like literally going behind enemy lines. It's literally like you're going into a third world country, communist. Everybody's scared of everybody and everything. People are outside walking their dogs with masks on, like by themselves, nobody in sight, nobody around them, but they're still wearing a mask, like everybody. And you're just like, it's very creepy. It's one thing I get going into the stores, totally disagree with it, but I get it. But this idea that I'm walking my dog in a residential neighborhood by myself outside in 75-degree weather, and I'm going to wear a mask because again, science. This is insanity.
So much science. Yes. I mean, I can't. I'm practically choking Like inside, I feel it, all the science, and it moves me in the cockles of my heart.
Yes.
But so speaking of which, I mean, you mentioned people outside by themselves walking their dogs with masks on. My wife got together with a friend and her kids and everything, and everybody went out hiking earlier today. On the trail, on the trail hiking, there's people wearing freaking masks, and like at least one person was actively like was visibly upset that my wife and that whole clan was not wearing masks, like visibly concerned. And then she stops at the corner gas station to get hot chocolates for everybody. And this is one her and I have been in and out of it without masks on numerous times over the last few months. Often I've seen the staff without masks on. They don't care.
Yeah.
And some lady was like, "Oh my gosh, no mask!" Like covering up and everything. Is like, wow. It's actually it drives me crazy that the crazy is actually getting worse somehow. I'm like,
Yeah.
has nobody noticed that the dead bodies are not piling up like cordwood outside the hospitals?
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. Like for me, I want to be respectful of businesses, right? And so
Right.
so for me, I take the approach, and and again, it doesn't make me the most popular guy within conservative circles because everybody's just kind of like screw everybody who tells me to wear a mask. And I take the approach of like I refuse to wear it on public property. So if I'm in my home, if I'm walking on the sidewalk, and even going to our local post office,
Yep.
I refuse to wear a mask. Now, I did like twice going to our post office because I'm friendly with the post office lady. There's one lady that works at our little post office right here. And she said, I'm getting in trouble. I'm like, okay, I don't want to get you in trouble. So I'll do it if I have to come up to the desk. Like, fair, right? But there's one time I came in to get a package and I go up, I'm not wearing a mask, and I go up and get my package and I turn around to leave. And the guy behind me makes a comment to the lady there. And he's like, I thought we were supposed to wear masks in here. You're referring to me. And I turn and look at the guy, and the guy's literally wearing a mask like practically down below his mouth. And I'm like, seriously, like it's over your chin. Like, and I'm the problem here.
It's like, yeah, it's come on, dude. Who are you kidding? But my approach is more your direction, I would say. As a rule, not always. It's like my rule is I'm going in not wearing a mask, but if some staff member or something asks me to wear one, okay, fine, I'm not going to fight with you, but I'm going to make you ask, unless I just know that okay, this place I'm going in there, I know they're going to ask.
Yeah.
So unless I'm prepared to make an issue out of it, which I don't want to, I don't want to sit there and argue with the poor 18-year-old kid that's trying to keep his job.
Yeah.
I don't see the benefit there at all. Arguing with the manager might be beneficial, especially if it's a locally owned business and not like a big giant corporate entity. That even the manager is just trying to keep his job.
Right. And that's
I'm not
and that's
short
my
version.
that's
I'm
my
not
thing.
interested in arguing about it with somebody putting somebody on the spot. I'm just not, at least not at this point. I'm getting closer, I'll be honest. But for now, it's like I'll make you ask, but if you ask, I'll put it on.
Right. But even then, that's where I'm beginning to have this mentality of I'm not going to big box stores anymore. I'm not going to the big corporations. I'm going to small businesses, and especially for me, this was a big wake up call with COVID-19 coming over here. Was if we weren't relying so much on these big multinational corporations, we wouldn't be relying so much on China. For all we know, COVID-19 could have been actually centralized in China. Would have been very minimal impact over here because there wouldn't be thousands of people traveling back and forth between China and the United States because we're not doing the trade with them. And maybe, just maybe, had we only been going with the local people that are making something themselves or buying from the farmers or whatever it is, maybe we wouldn't be shut down right now.
No, I agree with that. And that's highly likely. And at the very least, we wouldn't be so dependent on this small handful of massive national/global corporations, and they wouldn't be getting all the money funneled to them right now. And yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm actually going out of the way more now to support the local businesses as opposed to going to the big box places, where I can, which is unfortunately difficult because they've already done such a good job of shutting down a lot of the smaller businesses.
Yeah,
And I don't even
look at the response. Look at the response. Every single time the Democrats do something, right? These shutdowns, I blame either the Democrats or the big government Republicans, right? What always happens at every single thing that the left is trying to do, it always either centralizes the power with the big government or it centralizes the power with the big corporations. That's the result of everything. $15 minimum wage, all the regulations. McDonald's and Walmart, they can absorb the added costs. The little mom and pop coffee shop, they can't. Now think about this. All the small businesses, it's like these lockdowns were made to clear the path for Amazon and Walmart. Like literally, we're going to get all the competition out of the way. And then we're just going to come in. You're going to have Applebee's. You're going to have McDonald's. You're going to have Walmart. And you're going to have Amazon. Like they cleared the pathway. It's almost like they wanted it to happen.
Almost, isn't it?
And then on top of that, China, guess who's making all of our face masks?
I couldn't imagine.
Gavin Newsom signed $1 billion deal with China to buy face masks.
He did that on purpose?
Yes, after China gave us coronavirus, which apparently is racist to say, but he signed $1 billion contract while all of us out here are not allowed to work. We could use some of that money ourselves because Gavin Newsom is banning us from leaving our homes, but he gives the money to the country who gave us this mess in the first place to make our masks instead of saying, hey, does anybody in California can't work? If we send you guys some supplies, would you guys like make some masks for us?
Wow. Geez, just call up the My Pillow guy, for crying out loud.
I know, he'd do it.
call up Mike Lindell. He'll happily make some masks for you, and it'll probably be cheaper, actually, than what China is going to charge you, even with their suicide nets.
Probably.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I of course, China's making most of our stuff, including our masks, but that Newsom specifically signed. What did you say? $billion?
Yeah, I believe with a B. I believe it was like 900 million or something insane
Close
like
enough.
that. Yeah,
close enough.
Essentially $1 billion
for them to specifically make masks for the virus that they sent over here.
I'll do it for a tenth of that. I'll do it for a tenth of that.
Yeah. I will make you. I have got a bunch of old T-shirts. I will cut them up and turn them into all kinds of net gaiters. I'll even wash them first.
Yes, and on top of that, if we're talking about actual legitimate science, and I know this wasn't why I came on, but this is kind of fun to talk about. When you're actually looking at the actual legitimate science, if you look at all the places that are requiring face masks, it's getting worse. Now, when you look at the studies, actual medical studies, face masks actually make it worse and more transmissible because it's breaking apart the droplets and the condensation in your breath. They go smaller. That means they're not. Yeah, they're not falling to the ground. They're floating in the air. It's making it more contagious. Why do you think New York and California and every single other lefty state that is forcing 90% of people to be wearing face masks, why is it so rampant? But then Iowa, in the middle of nowhere, they can walk around without any face masks and they're perfectly healthy. It's because it makes it worse.
Yeah, exactly. And if anything, it doesn't matter anyway. It's not stopping it. Anyone can look at it, should be able to just look at just the raw numbers and go, well, obviously, regardless of how it's breaking apart droplets, how that is affected by what type of mask or not, it's obviously not stopping anything. At the very least, it's not helping. Like you think, well, it'd be worse even. Oh, really? Compare it with just about anywhere that isn't mandating masks all the time.
But here's the problem. I'm out here in communist California.
Yep.
People out here are brainwashed, right? So they see the numbers rising, and what are they like? Okay, so a logical person would say, almost everybody's wearing a face mask, and the numbers are rising, skyrocketing right now. Like I think we had like 10,000 cases yesterday, like something insane, right?
Right.
Numbers are skyrocketing. I feel like a logical person would say, why are we wearing a face mask right now if the numbers are still going up? Like, does it not work? What their response is, that 10%, that's what's causing. All of you 10%ers that are not wearing the face mask, it's your fault.
If it's even 10%, I don't think it's even that many. I'll be honest. I mean, here in Michigan, I walk around and I don't live in the most mega part of the state, but it's not a rah rah Whitmer part of the state either. It's it's kind of these days kind of down the middle, maybe slightly more MAGA actually, and yet it is probably 99% mask compliance these days. Like I just said, my wife had 2 interactions today, at least, where people were visibly upset that she was not wearing a mask. And yeah, it's I don't think it's even 10% that are non-compliant, at least in any sort of populated area. You know, if I go into northern Michigan, where it's a lot more rural and where it is more mega country, okay, yeah, maybe it may even be flipped. I don't know. You know, that is where you're more likely to find some of the restaurants and stuff that are giving Whitmer the finger and being like, "No, sorry, we're staying open. Thank you very much." But still, I mean, they're not. They usually people from our side, from our portion of the state, go to their portion, not vice versa. You know.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think I was talking with my friend Sam Jones, who's one of the podcasters on my podcast network, and he was telling me, he's like, looking back at the founding of our country, one of the main reasons why we had the Revolutionary War was taxation without representation, right? So because the king was just making all these rules, and America had no say in it, right?
Right.
It's kind of happening right now. I mean, when you think about it, like out here in California. Gavin Newsom is speaking things into existence. He doesn't have the authority to do that. We elected the legislative branch in order to create the laws. So technically, we are having all these regulations without representation. I mean, and I would say that this is probably more oppressive than anything that our founding fathers experienced with England. At a certain point, I feel like we're heading toward this major rift in our country. Unfortunately, I mean, are we going towards civil war? I mean, the times are definitely worse now than they were in the 1700s when the Revolutionary War happened. I don't want that to happen.
Right.
But at a certain point, I feel like, what other option is there?
As far as the reach of the state goes, oh yeah, it's way, and it has been. The state has been much more intrusive in our lives for a long time than England was, for the most part, on most Americans. And I say for the most part. I'm pretty sure there are exceptions. I mean, you go through the list of grievances in the Declaration, and the one that always gets me is the quartering of troops. It's like I don't know, but of course I don't know how widespread it was, but it seems pretty clear that Britain thought they could just say, we're staying at your house and yours and yours and yours, and we'll take kind of what we want. You know, that would be worse than it is right now. That one particular thing, at least. As far as the taxation goes, way better. Way better. And of course, now they don't have to come directly into our house, at least not physically, because now they successfully moved most school online. This little guy right here, that's the government coming into your house now. As we've already
all day long.
Yep. As we've already seen with some cases, them going, you've got a BB gun hanging on your door. We can't have that. And other sundry things, you know, them being very upset that parents now can suddenly monitor them and wanting to make sure that they can't, or that they will sign things saying they won't. And like, this is what I was afraid of. I was like, shortly before that stuff started to come out, I'm like, no, this is returning things to home. This is not a bug. This is a feature. This is part of what they want. This is how they get directly into your house. And I'm like, well, homeschooling is exploding. Yeah, it is. In fact, we started homeschooling as a result of this. But I already know what's going to happen. Within a couple of years, they're going to find a couple of cases where the homeschooling is going poorly, where the parents are not dealing with it well, where the kids get into some kind of trouble, or they send CPS into some homeschooling family's home, and they might even uncover a couple of legitimate cases of abuse. They might well do that. So let's not pretend that doesn't happen. But they're going to use that to tar every homeschooler, and before you know it, they're going to be passing laws forbidding it.
Yep.
And
this is the danger. This is the danger of the left, and this is the danger of how extreme the Democrat Party has been. Now, I would make the argument the Democrat Party has been this extreme for a long
Well,
time.
it has.
They've just hidden it, right? They've hidden it
Yes.
before patriotic language. It's just now they're like, oh yeah, this is us. Like
This
there's
is
no hiding it.
yeah, this is where they've been wanting to go for a very long time. And guys like you, me, and a whole bunch of other people with much larger platforms in the conservative talkosphere uh, have been saying the same thing for decades in some cases. And of course, everyone's like, "Ah, you're crazy. That's a slippery slope fallacy, buddy. We're at the bottom of the slope.
We've already been down the slope. The slope is back up there.
Right. It's like we hit the slope about we hit the bottom of the slope about 5 years ago, and they're like, you know what? That's not close enough to hell. Somebody get me an excavator.
You're only sweating a little bit. You're not quite there yet.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, needless to say, this is where they've been wanting to go, and they want to dig deeper. They want to dig deeper until it literally caves in on itself, and we're friggin' buried. And I've been saying for years that 1984, because everybody always talk about 1984, right? Like, no, it's a red herring, total red herring. 1984 isn't the one you need to read. Go read Brave New World. That's the world that we're almost in right now. But now all of a sudden with COVID, it's like they're jumping ahead. It's like they're almost jumping into more of a 1984 type territory where they're like, you know what, keeping everybody nice and comfortable and fat, dumb, and happy while we control them is cool, but I really want the boot stomping on the face of humanity. I really want that imagery from Orwell instead. Let's go for that one.
Yeah. I mean, it's literally like we're heading towards this path of Hunger Games, and right. With it, and I'm like when those movies and the books came out, and you're looking at that, you're like, okay, so that's extreme. That like we'll never get there, and then now this happens, and I'm like, oh yeah, I could see us being there. We'll be there in a few years.
It is something similar. We are definitely heading. You could argue if somebody from the 50s were to suddenly get a lens into today, they would be like, oh, yeah, sure enough, that's a dystopian nightmare.
Yeah.
We laugh at that idea right now. It's like, we're not a dystopian nightmare. We can still do this. We can still do that. It's like, yeah, but compare it to before. Relatively speaking, it looks kind of like a dystopian nightmare a little bit. If you're to compare it with the world, especially that they were imagining back in the 50s, what they're imagining today would be like. Yeah, dystopian nightmare. And it's a little wild. It's a little crazy to think about that. Civil War, is it coming? Yeah. How it takes shape, I think, is still up for grabs. How long it takes us to start firing shots, up for grabs. Is it coming? Yeah, one way or another.
But at the same time, and I've been making this case on my podcast, I think we're in the Civil War right now. It's just not militarily.
And yes, and this is where I get into it sometimes with one of my Twitter friends about whether or not there is or will not be a civil war. And the general assumption with people who say no civil war is that civil war means a bunch of states versus another bunch of states. I'm like, no, that's not what that. When we talk about it today, that's not what we mean. We mean various groups against various groups. It doesn't even necessarily have to mean that either group has a formed government per se. They'll have an organization, a set of ideals. It can be factions fighting it out in the streets. The government can almost be an aloof neutral party in certain scenarios. However, I think the scenario they're trying to push us into is they keep ramping up with the lockdowns or riots or switching back and forth between the two. And I think they're trying to provoke us. I think they're trying to provoke some group on the right to launching a seriously violent attack somewhere against someone. Something with full on, something where a bunch of guys show up in plate armor and ARs, ready to rock and roll, and just tear something or someone up. And then that becomes the catalyst to launch their version to launch some sort of martial law. and then they come, banging on us. And because the right is not terribly organized, frankly, uh, we're not organized very very much into the militias and extremist groups and everything that they like to think we are. Um, it will be, unfortunately, probably a lot simpler than a lot of people think to go door to door and take a bunch of people's stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I would not be surprised if that's where we're heading, because literally I feel like people on both sides, it's been so ramped up, and part of it I blame the social media companies, because the algorithms and their divisions and putting everybody in echo chambers, and so everything gets ramped up. You're talking about other people, you never have any pushback, you never have anybody challenge your thoughts. Like, honestly, it's fascinating, because I intentionally try to go on lefty progressive shows, because number one, I want to hear what the news is that they're hearing. But number two, I want to hear their talking points, and I want to see, okay, can I have a better argument than them, right?
Right.
So there was one of the shows that that I think I'm going back on, their Voice from the Underground, and the host from that show, I've been on there a couple of times, but the host from the show, he was like, okay, so really, how do you think the Democrats would actually ruin America? How would the Democrats actually destroy this country? And I went off the top of my head last night in the middle of the night, no list, no research, 40 things of different ways that the Democrats will ruin our country. I mean, everything from getting rid of the Electoral College to making Washington, D.C. a state, Puerto Rico a state, Samoan Islands a state. That's 6 more senators, making all the illegals legal. That's more votes. Then you start getting into the practice. Like, I just went down the list. And he's like, I don't buy that. And I'm like, guys, come on. Like, I'm literally systematically going down the list. The Supreme Court will be compromised. The Electoral College will be compromised. Like,
and these are all things they've said. These are all things they've said.
Yes,
exactly. These are not secrets. This is not stuff that showed up on, the Bongino report. These are not things that just that Gateway pundit, freaking cooked up in the middle of the night. Anything. And I'm not even saying they do that. That's their perception. This is not something that Rush Limbaugh spouted off when he was on chemo. No, this is flat out, literally stuff that they have said. It's come out of their own mouths. The video clips are out there. All you got to do is Google the crap and say, oh yeah, they did say all that. And then, of course, you got to decide whether or not you agree with it.
It's on Joe Biden's flipping website.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Yes. I mean, they're literally talking about taxing extended magazines at $200 a pop.
It's insanity.
This would cost me $212.
Man,
it's like, no, but it's not going to fly.
It's literally like we're living in an alternate universe, and we're in the same country, but we have two different realities. And and to bring it back into like what's going on within Christianity and the church and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
these same kinds of things are happening. Yeah. But like, honestly though, like this is literally happening within the church. It's happening within Christianity. Yes. It's not like this is Christian versus non-Christian. This is kind of a civil war going on within the Christian church. Like today, it was really interesting. I posted an article. By the way, did you see the news today about George Soros?
No.
So George Soros,
he didn't die by chance, did he?
No. George Soros. This is not a wild conspiracy theory. This was not cooked up on Breitbart or Gateway Pundit, or like, they heard somebody overhearing somebody on a plane that said that George Soros did something. No, George Soros on his own Twitter account announced a new president of Open Societies Foundation. Okay. New president.
Who would that be?
The chairman of Smartmatic.
Are you kidding me?
You cannot make this crap up, okay? So now here's the interesting thing, and I'm going to bring this back into Christianity. I'm going to bring this back into Christianity. So ever since the election, the Southern Baptist Convention and the ERLC, and so that's Russell Moore, Al Mohler, all the usual suspects, right? Okay. They've been coming out and condemning conservatives for questioning the results of the election. They've been providing cover. They've been doing all this kind of stuff. Yeah. Well, I did a podcast with my good friend Bobby Lopez on the Big Brown Gadfly. Turns out, according to the Open Society's website, they've been sending money into the Southern Baptist Convention and the ERLC. Really? So now you have the Southern Baptist Convention pushing the
wow.
talking points from Open Society, where the president of Open Society is the chairman of Smartmatic. And not only that, the president, the chairman of Smartmatic has been on the board of Open Society for how long? So you have the Southern Baptist Convention pushing the very talking points of the company accused of rigging the election.
Wow. You heard it here, people. Holy crap. I'll be honest, I don't even know how to process that because dang, that's wow. That's some stuff right there.
But this is the state of the church, and this shows the infiltration of the left into religion, and it goes Christianity, and this is where I always say when I'm talking about this book is it's not just for Christians. My previous book, Social Injustice, that was more geared towards Christians. That was theology, that kind of thing. This is obviously focused on what's happening within the Christian church, but this is happening everywhere. The left has infiltrated entertainment, mainstream media, politics, the news, every single thing that you can possibly think of, the education system, and they've set their sides on the church, and they've really infiltrated the church. And I'd say it goes the same thing: the Catholic Church, the Christian church.
Absolutely.
I have Mormon friends that say the same thing in the Mormon church. All different kinds of religions. This was very, very intentional. Mm-hmm. But this is the results. This is all coming to fruition now. Like literally, it sounds like these guys are coming out of a Bernie Sanders rally, or they're getting advice from AOC and then preaching it from their pulpits. Yeah. And then we're like, what the heck happened? Maybe they've always been like this, but now they're turning. Also, follow the money. Open Society, Smartmatic, they're all tied in together.
That is astonishing right there. That is absolutely. And of course, when you first now getting to the book Church and State, out of curiosity, how long ago did you start putting this together?
We started putting this together probably beginning of the summer. So kind of mid-COVID. Yep, mid-COVID.
We were already kind of into it, but okay. And of course, nobody was really paying much attention to what a Smartmatic or a Dominion was or anything. Of course, we all knew Open Society and George Soros and all of that, but nobody really knew what a Smartmatic and Dominion was. So we didn't know about those ties as of yet. So what was it that prompted you especially to actually start really putting this together? Because it wasn't just the encroachment of the state, as you said, it is the infiltration of the church by the social justice left, which of course you covered in Social Injustice. There was a lot of that talk of that infiltration in that book, but of course this is taking it from a different perspective and also building on what you were doing there. So what was like the thing that made you say, okay, we need another one, we need to go after this, we need to look at how it is at the relationship between church and state?
Yeah, well, I think when we're dealing with Social Injustice, so the first book we put out earlier this year, again, that one I thought this is a theological battle that we're dealing with here, and this is you've got these pastors that are pushing the social justice movement, and they're just like almost like just embracing this progressive ideology, and it's finding its way into the church. We need to confront this on a theological level, and maybe that was naive of me to be thinking that way, that it was just a theological battle. But then during this election cycle specifically, we began to see a lot of these same people that for years we've looked up to as conservative Christian evangelical leaders. And all of a sudden, they're literally embracing racial reparations, systemic racism, Black Lives Matter. They're justifying voting for Joe Biden. They're saying it's okay to vote for a pro-abortion candidate. All these things, and they're like, well, I'm pro-life, but it's okay to vote there. But you can't critique me because I'm still pro-life. And I'm like, guys, you can't say vote for Joe Biden, who's okay with abortion up to birth, and still call yourself pro-life. I'm sorry, but you can't logically do that, right?
They are not compatible.
Not at all. And so for me, I was looking at this and I'm like, okay, so something's amiss here. Like something's off, because it's not just that you have these pastors that are kind of naive, and some of this stuff is kind of like trickling in and they're just hearing because they're watching CNN all day, right? There's something more sinister going on. So then I started talking to some of my friends that are within ministry, within the Southern Baptist Convention, that are associated with the Gospel Coalition, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, no, this actually goes deeper, and maybe this warrants a follow-up book.
Yeah.
And so we kind of put this thing together and got a bunch of different contributing authors, same kind of thing as last time.
Right.
But one of the interesting things was I had Bobby Lopez, who he's got a podcast on my network. He wrote the chapter on the rot at the seminaries, and I thought that was one of the key aspects of the book, was really seeing, okay, so there's a specific attack of infiltrating the seminaries, because that's where they train all the pastors, right? So if you can control the seminaries, now you control all the churches everywhere, because that's where the pastors are being trained. So then you start diving into that. Well, again, you start following the money. George Soros, Paul Singer, it's like the same names that are funding the Clintons, the Obamas, everybody. They're also funneling money into the Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. They're also funneling money into virtually every single Christian seminary in the entire country. And then what's associated with that money is particular curriculum, particular authors, particular speakers. There's always conditions. There's always something going along with that. And then for me, I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, so I can now begin to pinpoint what their theological error is going to be depending on what seminary they went to. And it's really interesting when you start diving into that, like the interfaith dialogue kind of stuff. If they come out of Fuller Seminary, guys like James White, John Piper, Rick Warren, they all came out of the same seminary. They're all pushing interfaith dialogue. There's a common denominator there. You can kind of begin to trace all this kind of stuff going into these different seminaries. And so basically the whole idea of the book was tracing where were these points of attacks. It's the Gospel Coalition, it's the seminaries, and then it's particular ideologies that we take a look at as well, where again they're hijacking progressive talking points with biblical Christianity. And at a certain point, it's like somebody's got to put this thing together, because I feel like a couple of people out there, they're talking about it a little bit, but nobody's actually attacking this thing full on. And these churches are just going off the deep end right now. And that to me is the really scary thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we've said before, we've definitely got the same thing. We've been dealing with it longer. And there's I think Michael Voris with the Church Militant, or whatever it is the name of his group is right now. I think it's had to change a couple of times due to legal reasons. But he did a story a while back on how Stalin actually intentionally sent people out to infiltrate the Catholic seminaries, figuring it's like, this is this is our biggest obstacle out there in the world. And if we can infiltrate them and weaken them, it's where our lives are going to be a lot easier. And I think it took longer than he would have liked, but I think it's very fair to say that a lot of it is infiltrated, and not just by socialists, but also, frankly, by homosexuals, because there's a few stories about what goes on in a couple of the seminaries out there. One in Austria, and I'm sure you heard a lot of the stories about the former Cardinal McCarrick and the activities he was up to with seminarians and everything over on the East Coast there. It was it's ugly. It's ugly, and it's disgusting, and it's terrible. And it's long past time that the various leaders start stepping up and and shutting this crap down. Unfortunately, too many of the leaders are in fact the infiltrators, or the ideological descendants of the infiltrators, and it's showing badly. And it's obviously it's trickier for Catholics than it is for you guys, but to some degree, the laity does need to rise up and start holding these people to account in whatever way, shape, and form that we possibly can. And yeah, it's basically and then this is the kind of the danger. If the clergy isn't going to lead, the people in the laity will.
Yeah.
Eventually, they will, and that is. It's going to cause further splits and division, and I'm not looking forward to that.
Yeah, no.
I'm really not, and especially since there will be plenty of people like me who are kind of be like, well, okay, we can hold them to account without throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's not like that's never had to happen before. It has many times, but if you try to do that, you're going to be caught in the middle. You're going to be caught in the crossfire to some degree, and kind of like you were saying with the masks. You're against masks, but you don't want to take it out on the poor business owner either. So you're caught a little bit in the crossfire on that one. It's the
Right.
same sort of thing, just on a more important issue.
Yeah, no, it's really true, and I think too. I think the important thing to understand about this infiltration that's been going on, specifically within America, I think, is that the ultimate goal is conquering America. Like that's why you have guys like George Soros
Yep.
funneling money into the largest denomination in the country, the Southern Baptist Convention,
Mm-hmm.
is because the whole point is to take down our country, because our country actually represents freedom. It represents Christianity. It represents all of these ideals, and it values human life, right? That's why they're trying to take out the church, because the church is supposed to be the moral compass for the country. And the church has been failing in that for decades now. And then now we look out on the streets. Guess what's happening? Anarchy, rioting, looting, killing. They're calling evil good and good evil.
Literally.
It's almost like it's been prophesied in the Bible. I mean, it's almost like that.
It is. You know, there are parts of this that are awfully familiar. Tell me more.
Yeah. Well, and also too, this is the thing that is crazy to me about a lot of these pastors that are embracing this kind of ideology. Is that last I checked, these guys, they spent their entire careers reading the Bible. They've got all these degrees. They've got all these seminaries degrees. Did they not read the book of Revelation, where literally the Democrat platform is to establish the Antichrist reign? Like, did they not read that part of the Bible where it talks about a one world religion, one world government, one world currency? What's the Democrat pushing for? They're pushing for open borders. They're pushing for, a world currency. They're pushing for every single thing. And I'm just like, guys, you guys are literally, in the name of supposedly establishing Christ's kingdom, you're literally building the Antichrist kingdom.
You're kind of doing the other thing.
Yeah. I'm like, wait, God's in control. He's going to make it happen. But that doesn't mean we have to help Satan.
And I'll be honest, the whole, when you start talking about, all the crazy things going on in the world and everything, and there's always somebody who goes, well, God is in control, so relax. I'm like, okay, all right. God was in control of the Black Plague. God was in control during the Holocaust. God was in control during all kinds of horrible things that have happened. You know what? It wasn't a good time. Okay. Yeah, sure. The grand, big, ultimate battle is won. I get that. And I know, yes, in the end, I need to worry about my own salvation and worry about where I am with God. But you know what? In the meantime, I just as soon not have to fight a civil war if I could avoid it. That'd be great.
Yeah. Well, it's really frustrating for me too, because that is such an unbiblical ideology.
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, you look throughout the Old Testament and even the New Testament to a certain degree, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at the Bible, you clearly see in God's word that like Israel, everybody's sinning. Everybody, they're worshiping false idols.
Yeah.
They're having sex all over the place, orgies, like crazy things. They're sacrificing their kids. It's insanity, right?
Yeah.
And then you have
I'm actually reading through the Bible again. I came apart. I can't remember. I already can't remember which book it was. It might have been early in Ezekiel or just before that, but talking about how, or maybe it was probably Jeremiah. That there was it was just like one or two verses, but kind of mentioned, it's like, they were doing like the sacrifices to Moloch and everything. Oh wait, I know what that means. They were sacrificing their kids.
Awesome. That was pretty bad, and everybody was doing it, right?
Yeah.
And then there'd be like one guy who would be like, "Yeah, this isn't right," and then God redeemed Israel through the faithfulness of that one guy, because the one guy was like, "Yeah, you know what? I'm not just going to sit back and say, you know what? I trust God. God's in control. I'm just going to do my thing. I'm going to pray. Right. I'm going to do things with my family, and we're good." No, he was like, "Yeah, I'm going to take on the king." And I'm going to expose the false prophets, and then God blesses that, and then people are like, "Oh wow, maybe God's the way to go, so I'm going to follow him." And then he redeems Israel. This happened over and over and over again.
Yeah. Sometimes they listen. Sometimes Israel is redeemed, and other times, like Jeremiah, they don't listen so good. And then the king of Babylon comes along and says, "Well, you suck, so I rule now." And you are trying to get away. You don't have eyes anymore. Sorry. Yeah. It's like, ooh. Well, of course, what's interesting, and this is a bit of a tangent, but what's interesting about Jeremiah is he was literally telling them, it's like, you know what, guys, it's too late. Surrender, and you'll live, and he'll be nice to you. If you keep fighting, in this particular case, you're gonna get steamrolled. I find that really interesting. Like the message was like, okay, guys, you're too far gone right now. The only way for you to be redeemed is through a lot of suffering. Now, you can either submit to the punishment that I'm going to give you, and it'll be less, or you continue in your pride, and the spankings will continue until morale approves.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Oh, froze up.
At where we are as like a country today, I think, a lot of people will say America is too far. Like I've had multiple guests on my show, and they're like, we don't think that there is any coming back for America because we are too far. I mean, think about it. We're aborting babies by the hundreds of thousands every single year.
Yep.
We're calling good evil, evil good.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing for me is, I'm looking at it, I'm like, I feel like there's enough people. There's enough God honoring people where if we actually decided to take a stand and actually get out there, preach the gospel,
Yep.
actually change lives, do things like that, I feel like God could actually honor that. And I kind of go on this like kind of eschatological tangent sometimes where I look throughout history and I always see every single empire, it seemed like Satan was behind that empire trying to conquer the world, right?
Yep.
Babylonian Empire, Roman Empire. Bring it into more modern times. You had England, who practically conquered the entire world. You had Nazi Germany that was trying to conquer the entire world.
Yep.
And I feel like that was Satan's attempt to be like, yeah, I want to establish the Antichrist. And every single time God's like, nope, we're not quite there yet. Implode. Try again next time, Satan. Yep. And I feel like this is. I feel like we're at that moment of, is it going into end times? Yeah. Or is this the implosion time? And I'm kind of leaning towards the implosion side of Satan's plan, because of how much people are getting exposed, because they're not getting away with it. Like, this is actually coming out. Like the election fraud's getting caught, the deep state's getting caught. People are beginning to wake up. Not everybody, but enough people. And for me, I'm starting to feel like this could be that moment where God's like, you know what? It's not time. And I felt that way back in 2016 when Trump won over Hillary.
Yep.
And I felt like that was that moment where God was like, okay, Satan, you tried. Hillary was your candidate, Satan. And I said, no, here's Trump. And then ever since then, it's been the Democrats just clawing, trying to hold on and trying to hold on. At least I'm praying that it's Satan's implosion.
I hear what you're saying. And I'm not saying that you're wrong about the implosion thing. However, so far, they're still getting away with it. That's the thing right there. So far, I haven't seen so much as a glimmer that there's going to be a perp walk of anybody. It may be getting exposed, and maybe more people that are aware, and obviously this is good. But as far as anyone actually getting held to account, I haven't seen any of that happening just yet. And I don't have a lot of hope that anyone will. Now, what I do hope is that enough people are aware, enough people are sort of awake to this now, that essentially enough people will sort of repent and turn back to God and manage to push back on this thing, that we still do wind up getting a great awakening instead of a great reset. But I always hesitate to say anything too definitive. That's my hope. Right. That's what I hope is going to happen.
Yeah.
Any number of other things that are far worse could happen.
Yeah. Well, but
and even the awakening, I expect it to be difficult, because the powers that be behind the stuff, they're not going to go quietly, because especially this time around, I think they're pushing so hard right now because they think they've won, or at the least they think ultimate victory is within their grasp, and they're not going to let go of it without a fight. What that fight's going to look like, I don't entirely know, but they're not just going to go. They're not just going to go, they failed this time around, try again in 20 years. That's not happening.
Right.
That's not happening without a fight of some sort. And it'd be wonderful if it could just be a spiritual fight. That'd be swell. I don't think it's going to be. I think it's spilling over into the physical world in some way, shape, or form. And I think no matter what comes, we're in for the fight of our lives, which, again, is why I think your book coming out is when it is important. It's relevant. That's also why I think networks like yours and small beginning ones like mine are also important in this little fight, this massive fight, doing our little part in this massive fight that we're all in for, whether whether you like it or not. And and of course nobody wants it. Nobody wants to fight. Nobody wants, and I'm using this figuratively speaking, not literally speaking, but nobody wants, as Theoden put it, open war. But as Aragorn put it, open war is upon us, whether we want it or not.
Yeah.
And be ready for it, y'all.
Yeah. Well, that's really the scary thing I think about where we are as a country right now, as well, is like we do have some of those, even Christians that are like, hey, you know what? God's in control. He's imploding our country. We deserve it. We're just going to sit back and take it. And I take the approach of, to me, we should be obedient to the end.
Yes.
Let God work out all the details. But I'm still going to try to be faithful. I'm still going to try to preach the truth, preach the gospel, expose wickedness where it is. And I'm not going to give up. And the thing is that I think that we as conservatives as well, we have to remember the Republican Party. They're not necessarily on our side either.
No.
If you look about this, like we can, like they've all been giving lip service to Trump over this presidency because they realize that, like, what do you have? 95%, 97% approval rating among Republicans? It was insane. Yeah. So they knew that they had to give lip service. But ever since the election, all this evidence of election fraud, video footage of election fraud happening in front of our eye, like it's like you point and it's like, that's it. That's right there. Silence from them.
Yep.
Where are they?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, the only one that's said anything at all publicly is like Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
I mean,
the only one.
Just about. Yeah. I think maybe I've seen a glimmer here and there, but yeah, there
were 2 days when there were Republicans were coming out, and it was about a week after the election. And it was specifically because all of us conservatives were raising a ruckus because like, where are you guys? And then Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio and all these guys, they went on Fox News and they're like, oh yeah, election fraud, we should investigate.
And Trump was threatening to start holding rallies about over the issue. And well, he wasn't. It wasn't stated as a threat, but I think it was a threat. Be like, I'm going to keep my base riled up about this, and I'm going to make sure they don't forget. If you forget, they're going to remember that you forgot, and they won't vote for you anymore.
And see, to me, that's the wild card in all this with all this Civil War talk is that it's not Republican versus Democrat.
No,
and that's the thing. Not. The Republicans, they're almost worse than the Democrats because they're giving lip service to being conservative. But it's like they're secret agents, and that to me is the scary thing is when you don't know who's your ally and who's not your ally. Because to me,
I agree.
Looking at all of the people that are actually in office, there's a few that I like that were elected this time around. People like Lauren Boebert and Burgess Owens, and some people like that. I'm like, okay, I feel like they could go in there and they're not compromised yet. The people that are in there right now, I don't trust any of them. The only one maybe a little bit would be Ted Cruz, maybe, but even him. What has he really done? I know he filed that one thing in the Supreme Court.
Done much.
When it comes to censorship, which is a huge thing with this election, what has he done? He yelled at Jack Dorsey in a Senate hearing. Okay, cool. Now what?
Yeah. Well, that's exactly. That's one reason why I lost patience with people like Trey Gowdy, and I forget his name. It was another Jason Chaffetz. I was like, yeah, you guys look really good on C-SPAN, but busting people's chops in hearings, that's great. But what are you actually doing? I don't care how many sound bites you give me to own the libs. I do not care about any of that. I can, you know what? I'm a relatively intelligent person. I can own the libs on my own. Thanks. I don't need your sound bites. I need your action. I need your bills. I need your actual investigations. I need your indictments. I need your subpoenas. I need all of this. I don't need your sound bites. I don't care about any of that nonsense whatsoever. Give me something. Start showing me that you actually believe what you say, and then I'll be interested. That said, and the problem is we do keep voting for those people because they are a speed bump.
Yeah.
I long ago lost any faith that they're going to actually do anything to push back, but at least there's a speed bump. They recognize that they have to at least slow it down as part of the, as Margot puts it in the chat, a dog and pony show. And that is exactly right. It is a freaking dog and pony show. But you keep voting for the dog and pony show because otherwise it's straight off the cliff to Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah.
And your point about Trump getting elected in 2016, I never thought that it was like, okay, we've won. I thought, and I brought this up on last week's show as well. I never thought we won. I thought we've been given 4 years. We've been given at least 4 years to push back on our own, and I think we've wasted it. I think we've wasted these 4 years. I think we expected it all to be done by Trump, and there were too many people that still had faith in a Republican Congress, and they didn't do anything. For those 2 years, they did nothing whatsoever, and even Trump dropped the ball a whole lot. And this time around, whether it winds up being Trump or not, we cannot waste whatever time we've got left. We cannot. We have a fight ahead of us, and we have got to get ready for it. And as always, the most important thing is first that you are spiritually ready. If you ain't right with God, get right with God, for crying out loud, and figure out whatever it is that He needs you to do. Try not to figure out what you can do. Figure out what He needs you to do, because it's a fair bet that it's going to be different than what you think.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and I think also kind of we can make the parallel between like the do nothing GOP, or not even the do nothing, but the sinister GOP that's working subversively and stuff with a lot of these evangelical Christian leaders as well. Like they're doing the same things. Again, they're giving lip service to conservative Christianity, to evangelicalism. They're giving lip service to, well, I believe in the gospel and I check all these boxes and all this kind of stuff. And then they work behind the scenes. Like with one of the things that, like, Bobby Lopez, what he experienced, he was a professor at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. He got fired for sharing his testimony of he used to be gay, became a Christian, repented. Now he's not gay. He's married, has kids, and he's like, God saved me. And here's what He did for me. They would not let him share his testimony. They would not let him go out and give interviews and talk about it. And then finally he was like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to do it. They fired him. They got rid of him. And this is coming from Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, which is supposed to be the conservative hub within evangelicalism.
Wow.
And this is what's going on in our churches. And we've got to understand that just because guys like Al Mohler, who is directly involved with this specific case with Bobby Lopez, guys like Al Mohler, guys like Mark Dever, Jonathan, like I could go down the list of these guys that on one hand, they claim to be conservative Christians. And then they push these ideologies like Tabidi. Are you familiar with Tabidi Aniabwile? I can never pronounce his last name.
No.
He's a former Nation of Islam guy, became a Christian. Nice. He was a pastor with Mark Dever, and then now he's got his own church. Well, he carried over a lot of his Nation of Islam, Black liberation theology kind of stuff. And now he literally came out during the 2016 election and he said, I'm okay with essentially sacrificing abortion in order to get Hillary Clinton elected because I don't want Trump as president. Because we have to look at how are we taking care of the Black community. So he was willing to allow more baby, like his own word, I'm okay with more babies dying if we can get racial reparations for the Black community. That's a problem there, and he's supposed to be a conservative Christian. You've got Jonathan Lehman and Mark Dever that are putting out statements and sermons about critiquing conservatives that are single issue voters on abortion, and they said that you cannot be a single issue voter because you have to look at all the rest of the things and if you're truly pro-life, then you will be for welfare. You will be for open borders.
My gosh.
You will be for... This is coming from conservative Christianity.
I am so sick of hearing that. I am so sick of hearing that. If you're really pro-life, you know what? Crave it where the sun don't shine, pal. I don't care. Because you know what? Let's go ahead. Let's take that. Let's take it at face value. All right. The single issue voter thing. All right, fine. You know what? Show me any other issue that results in almost 1 million innocent lives dying every year. Show me one issue that does that. Innocent lives, not the result of bad decisions on their part or anything like that. And that's not to condemn, say that anybody deserves whatever happened. I'm not saying that. I am saying other extenuating circumstances. I'm saying, is there anything that compares? Find me 5 issues that add up to 1 million innocent lives dying.
Yep.
And I'll start to take your argument a little bit seriously.
Yep.
Until you can do that, you know what? Like I said, cram it where the sun don't shine. I don't want to hear it.
Yep.
And this is coming
out of conservative Christianity. This is coming out of conservative Christianity.
No. Supposed conservative Christianity.
Quote unquote.
There is nothing remotely conservative. There's nothing orthodox. There's nothing traditional at all about any of that nonsense whatsoever. Because you know what? Here's a funny thing. Traditional Christianity doesn't have a whole lot of hard lines on specific government policy as a rule. As most, there is the whole render under Caesar thing. However, and this is actually, we're already past an hour. This would be actually a fun thing to actually get into a little bit of the actual appropriate relationship between church, state, and role of government and everything. I believe in a very, 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 being of a conservative mindset, I believe in a very, very small role for government. And I do think, for crying out loud, even the Bible, the tithe was 10%. And that wasn't just to the temple. That was everything. That was the government and the temple, because the church and the state, they were one and the same. That covered your military, that covered your priesthood, that covered everything. What do we get taxed at these days? Average person gets taxed at somewhere between 25 and 35%.
Yep.
That's just income tax. That's to say nothing of that's federal income tax. That's to say nothing of Social Security. That's not state tax, city tax if you've got it where you live, sales tax, property tax, personal property tax if you've got that where you live, vice taxes. Just it one might say it piles up.
Yeah, no, it's true, and also too, I think we can get into a biblical understanding of the role of government as well, because that's really how our founding fathers established it. Was really understanding the idea of free will, the understanding of personal responsibility, and also to a certain degree, I think it actually reflects the gospel of the gospel is extended to everybody, but not everybody is going to make that decision to become a Christian, right? And in the same way, opportunity is provided to everybody here in America, but not everybody's going to take that opportunity. But that's the whole principle that the founding fathers established for us. It was rooted in biblical Christianity. All of this socialism, big government, supposed welfare and handouts and all that kind of stuff, that's antithetical to biblical Christianity. And I think I said this last time. I think on your show about the early church and their attempt at socialism,
right?
And literally they tried it out.
Yep.
And then you look at later epistles, Paul is going around raising money for the Jerusalem church.
Yep.
Clearly, socialism didn't work out too well in Jerusalem.
Right. Yeah. Like eventually, if all the rich people have sold their stuff and distributed it to everybody, and nobody's got any more stuff to distribute, eventually everybody's back to scrounging for the stale matzo ball.
Yeah.
That's just how it works. That's why you can't have everybody taking everything they have and selling it and giving it to the poor. Not everybody can do that.
And also, since when did it become evil to be successful at business? Since when was it oppressive for somebody to be successful? So, like, for example, everybody they attack, let's say, like Walmart. They're not going to attack Apple because all the lefties love Apple, right? But they're expensive, so they cater to the rich, so that's totally okay. But Walmart, they say these guys are multi-billionaires, right? They make it off the backs of poor people, and I'm like, okay, so number one, they're giving people jobs. So yes, they're minimum wage, low-paying jobs, but number one, they're not unionized, so they don't have to pay their union dues. So that's a huge thing. But also too, people aren't, it's not like they're slave labor. They're not being kidnapped and being forced to go work at Walmart. They're choosing to. On top of that, they're providing lower prices for the poor community.
Mm-hmm.
They're cheaper than anywhere else.
Yep.
So how is that oppressing the poor and stealing from the poor and becoming rich? What they did is they worked on volume. It's standard capitalism. They're
Mm-hmm.
smart with their money, and
Yep.
they're providing something, a service and a product cheaper than anybody else can do. I'm sorry. Since when was that a bad thing?
It's hard to figure out exactly when that became a bad thing, but yeah. My biggest gripe with Walmart is there's 47 checkout lines and there's only 3 of them open. That's my biggest gripe with Walmart right there.
Yeah. Well, see again. I don't go to Walmart specifically because I
Right.
don't buy any crap from China.
Right.
We don't have plastic in our household. This is probably the most plastic that we've got, is these earbuds over here. But
Mhm.
intentionally, because we want to be healthy and all that kind of stuff. We also want to support local businesses.
Right.
But that's an intentional decision. I don't
Yep.
think that Walmart is pure evil for selling something for cheap. I just wish they wouldn't buy crap from China.
Right. No, and that's fair enough. and yeah, I mean your point is absolutely correct. You know, in actually, yeah, sorry, this is again far afield of our original point, but as a business model, actually a good one to emulate is kind of Chick-fil-A. Everyone knows that their service is impeccable, and it's insane. My daughter actually works at a Chick-fil-A now, and she's been working there for a few weeks and still likes going there outside of work to get food. So we stopped there for lunch today, and we went through there. The cars were literally lined up and out into the street. She watched her clock. We were literally through the line, had our food within 15 minutes.
Wow.
I don't know how many cars were in that line ahead of us, but within 15 minutes we had our food. And it's because they have it's because they kind of realize that service is what separates them. So they have like a person for just about every position you could possibly think of. They literally have people whose whole job, especially during the rush hour, is just to put the orders in bags. They've got another person, all they do is run desserts. They've got like probably 4 normal fast food places worth of staff working there, and they're hustling.
Yep.
And that's how they get it done. And that's why they're hustling, but they're never rushed, never overwhelmed, because so many of them to take their little part and get it done. Actually, come to think, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good model for the fight that we're in, because there's no one person, there's no one small group of people that's going to be able to do it all on their own. But everybody taking their little bit can do it. And yeah, I agree with some of the comments I'm seeing in the chat. Yes, the ownership of Chick-fil-A, well, they kind of suck, and they kind of suck a little bit these days. Dan Cathy said some really stupid and embarrassing things, and it turns out their donations are not exactly what we all might have thought they were. I'm merely commenting on the quality of their service, which is still fantastic, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Let's not kid ourselves. It's still great as far as that goes. But in any case, that back to the thing at hand is, it's not just that the church is infiltrated. It's not just that the state is overreaching. It's that the state and the church are starting to preach all too often the exact same message of conformity and submission not to God, but to the secular authorities. And that's kind of where they lose me. It's like, no. Being submissive, being obedient. And yes, I know you can find multiple verses that talk about obeying the state authorities, but I agree very much with the Steve Day's take on this, that so long as they're obeying God, if they're going away from God, why do I gotta listen to them?
Yeah, but also too, we have to look at passages within context of the entire Bible, right?
I completely agree.
So one of the points that I always make, and it's funny, the response, and I'll tell you the response before I give you my example. The response to this point that I always make is, yeah, but Jesus is God, so essentially he can do anything and it's okay for him, but that doesn't mean that it gives us authority to do it. I'm like, I thought we were supposed to be like Christ. I don't know. I missed this one. So if we look at Jesus, right?
Yep.
Who were the rulers, the local rulers of his day? It was the Pharisees and the scribes. They weren't just religious. They
Uh-huh.
were also essentially local government. Now
Right.
they had certain
Agreed.
limitations. They could not do capital punishment themselves. That's why they had to go to King Herod and to Caesar. But they were essentially like the city, right? The
Hmm.
city council, essentially, right? So the thing is that Jesus, during his time, rebelled against his local government. He broke the Sabbath.
Yeah.
He
Right.
was not willing to play along with their stupid rules and stupid games. Now, none of those, or I don't want to say none of them, the majority of those had nothing to do with salvation. It was
Right.
not a gospel issue. And
Right.
in
Right.
fact, they were not actually specifically condemning or they were not specifically calling on the Jewish people to sin, right? So like
Right.
saying keep the Sabbath holy,
Yeah.
if somebody obeyed that, they weren't sinning. But Jesus knew that it was wrong for them to do that, so he intentionally disobeyed.
Yeah.
So was Jesus violating Romans 13? I don't think so. But the thing
One
is
would
that
think no. One would
yeah,
think no.
I would assume not. So if Jesus wasn't violating Romans 13, then us taking a stand against tyranny and bad government and bad laws is not violating Romans 13. We have to look at everything in biblical context, but most people forget that. They just look at the specific verse that says submit to the government, and it's like, okay, but got to look at the broader context.
Yep.
Like, do you think that Jesus sinned? No? Okay, cool. Then let's emulate him.
Yeah. Exactly. One might notice that his activities got him put on a cross by the
Yes.
by the government. So yeah. About that whole disobeying the government no matter what thing.
Well, and
one,
also
one
too,
might be
Jesus.
aware that the apostles were all with the exception of John martyred.
Yes, there is that, and also Jesus in Jesus' time, they had social distancing laws from the lepers.
Yeah.
Jesus intentionally violated social distancing laws. Should we emulate that today?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just throwing that out there. I mean, Gavin Newsom. Now, are you
Maybe.
familiar? Are you familiar with how tyrannical Gavin Newsom has gotten with these social distancing laws?
Go ahead and enlighten us just in case.
Okay, so for holidays.
Yes. Oh goodness, yes.
So for holidays, okay, and this is pre. This is when it wasn't as strict as it is now. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it's stricter now.
Yep.
So for the holidays, for Thanksgiving and Christmas, we were told you can only have 3 households at your home
Yep.
for a holiday for no longer than 90 minutes. You're not allowed to use the bathroom unless you sterilize it in between each use. You have to be outside using single-use silverware and plates. You cannot do buffet style. On top of that, you're not allowed to sing. You have to wear masks in between bites, and you have to be sitting 6 feet apart outside. Okay, so that was up until about a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
A week ago, now we're getting to the point to where stay at home. You're not allowed to interact with anybody outside of your house. We have a 10 o'clock curfew.
Mm-hmm.
We have all these different social distancing laws, rules. We're not allowed to go outside. Like literally, it's 7:15 here at night. If I go outside in 3 hours, I'm breaking the law and could get fined $500. That is tyranny. I have
Yeah.
a feeling that Jesus would go out at 10:30 at night. Just
I'm pretty sure.
intentionally.
I'm
Just
pretty sure he
intentionally.
would.
Yeah,
Just to tick him off. Yeah.
exactly.
You know, and I think you're absolutely right. And yeah, I knew about most of those finer points. And the whole thing is like he has to know that he can't actually enforce this. If you know, if more than like 5 people disobey this, you can't really enforce it.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, what if it's 5 people or 5 different households at the same house?
Well,
They just go into
right,
one house.
right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Then maybe, but yeah. And it is interesting though. I mean, there have been videos that I've seen of people spying on their neighbors, cops showing up or checking stuff out. I saw one thing that really pissed me off was I think it was some CBS affiliate somewhere looking at how many vehicles are in the parking lot of a church and complaining about that, saying how they can't possibly be following the social distancing. And I'm like, wow. So the state media now is spying on the citizens to make sure that they are complying with the state's edicts.
Yep.
Are you kidding me? And you're accusing us of being the fascists? Wow. How blind to yourself do you have to be to not see it? How can you have so little self-awareness? I do not understand it whatsoever. And here's the thing. I'm sure you've seen some of the videos that James O'Keefe has been releasing with his that he's that has recorded stuff from CNN calls and everything. Overall, it's not terribly exciting stuff so far. But part of the reason it's not so terribly exciting until you really start to pay attention and think about it and read between the lines is because they don't think they're doing anything wrong. They don't sound like they think they're covering something up. They really deeply believe this. I mean, even behind closed doors, frankly, they talk very much like they talk on the, when they're on air, which means they really believe this stuff. Yep. They are really that deep into it. And in a way, that's scarier to me than that they know that they're covering stuff up, that they know they're lying. Because that's just how far gone they are.
The ends justify the means to them, and that's the thing. They're like, for us as conservatives, we have a standard. As Christians, our standard is the Bible. As conservatives and as Americans, our standard is the Constitution of the United States.
Yep.
The left has no standard and makes it to where it's almost stunting our ability to fight back, is because we actually have standards. And here's a perfect example. They're willing to go burn buildings down, burn cop cars, beat up people, in fact, even kill people, like destroy entire cities. They're willing to go that far for their end goal.
Yep.
Conservatives aren't, because we actually have standards. We have morals. We have things that hold us back, limitations, because, hey, we value human life. We value property. We value these things. Yep. The left doesn't. They're willing to do anything. And I think also when we look at these governors, clearly Gavin Newsom doesn't actually believe what he's saying, or else he wouldn't be going to the French Laundry without social distancing, without a mask, goofing off, all that kind of stuff. Same thing with Nancy Pelosi. Dianne Feinstein was caught with the same thing. Every single one of these Democrats were caught, basically essentially proving that they don't actually believe what they're saying. But they're putting out these insane tyrannical laws, oppressing people, taking people's businesses away, destroying lives. For what purpose? In my opinion, this is all for the ultimate goal of just making sure that they have more power, more control, and seeing how far they can push us. And so far, they've been able to push us with very little resistance. As conservatives, we've been doing what? We've been yelling at them, posting on Twitter. Maybe we show up for a rally every now and then and things like that. But when push comes to shove, has anything changed?
We really haven't shoved back.
No.
And I don't. It's we're caught kind of in a very tough place, because the choices seem to be roll over and take it, or 1776.
Or we could go 1776, but the peaceful route, wait for the oppression. But like I've been talking to some friends. I'm like, can we just get like Orange County to like declare independence from Gavin Newsom? I mean, I would be all for that. Like, let's just declare independence. Say we do not acknowledge Gavin Newsom's authority as the communist dictator of the communist state of California, and we're going to declare independence, and we're going to self-govern ourselves down here. Or better yet, let's have a bunch of conservative businesses that are like, screw you, Gavin Newsom. We're going to open up our restaurant anyway. Stop me, and then have but the key is, you got to have the conservatives that actually show up. You have to have, everybody's got to be working together. We can't let a conservative take a stand and we all take a step back and let them take one for the team. We've got to make sure we're there. We got to pack out the place. We got to make sure that financially they're taken care of. So it's got to be a team deal.
But
but at a certain point, if conservatives would be like, these laws are unconstitutional. Gavin Newsom does not have the authority to do this. Because he doesn't have the authority, it's illegal. So I'm not going to submit to illegal laws because I don't want to be complicit with illegal behavior. So that means I should probably open up my bar, my restaurant, my whatever it is. Like, I feel like that would actually be the moral way of going about this.
Yeah, and there was a viral video, gosh, I think a couple of weeks ago now, from Newaygo, Michigan, Jimmy's Roadhouse. They were a place that decided, you know what? Screw you, we're open. And it was packed.
Yeah.
I was like, I loved it because I've eaten there.
Yeah.
It's like I've been there. I love that. That's a good place to go anyway. And it's pretty far from where I live. Otherwise, I would already be there. But and I was talking to my I was talking to my mom about it just last night actually, and she was like, yeah, he had his liquor license suspended. He can still sell what he's already got, but once he's out, he's out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, it sure would be a terrible thing if somebody just like, as he starts to run out, somebody just shows up with a few cases of beer at his back door as a donation.
Yeah.
It's like, here, I hear you're thirsty. Here, that would be terrible if that happened.
Oh yeah, I mean it would be awful. I mean just go to Costco. Costco's got cheap alcohol. They can stock up at Costco, right?
Oh, hey, you know what? I don't see why not.
Yeah, but again, at a certain point, when is enough enough? So again,
Yep.
to take it back to the founding fathers were willing to literally go to war over getting taxed on tea. They literally threw tea into Boston, right? Into the harbor. They literally they were protesting because they were getting taxed on tea. I think we're a little past that right now. So at what point are we going to be like, okay, we're no longer going to submit? And I think everybody's scared
Yep.
of being the one that's
More or
going to
less.
be like, I'm going to take a stand. But at a certain point, if we don't, it's the end of our country. It's the end of America as we know it. And that's the danger that we're in right now is conservatives want to fight back. Conservatives hate the fact that we're being pushed down, but at the same time, we're submitting. What the heck are we doing?
And you're right. That kind of, and this honestly, I've been saying this same thing for months now. That is what has to happen. The businesses have to start standing up because they're the front line right now. If they don't stand up, and it does have to be more than just one. And of course, when they do stand up, we've got to be there for them, whether it's the local barbershop or the local restaurant that says, you know what, screw you. If you want to sit down inside and eat, you can. Or if it's the random whatever store that says, you know what, screw you. We don't care if you wear a mask. You know what, go there.
Yep.
Just show up. If they try to shut down your church, don't let them. Show up at the doors anyway. If for some, and this was something that I started advocating for here in Michigan, was if your pastor, or your bishop, whatever, shuts the doors of your church in compliance with the state, show up outside the doors of your church.
Yep.
You can, you know what? Even as Catholics, we can have a prayer session. We can read the Bible and everything just fine right outside the doors of our church if we have to, and we will. And I know of at least one parish actually where that started to happen.
Yeah.
It's actually where we'll be going to mass more often these days, partially for that reason. And they started gathering just for private, quiet prayer on their own. And then as time went on, they started like, well, what if we just sing a song? What if and they actually talked to the priest ahead of time, like, what if, would it be okay if we like just got up and read some scripture and everything as a group? And if somebody just spontaneously does it, he's like, yeah, totally. Go do that thing.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
endorsed. Go.
Yeah. We'll see. And my thing is like, I maybe I take a more drastic approach, but I'm kind of at the point right now where I'm like, if your pastor is complying with all this crap,
yeah,
we should be doing Matthew 18 on them. We should be going through church discipline, and we should be going through the steps, confront them, bring somebody else, take it to the elders. If you go through the whole process and they're unrepentant, because again, they're complying with illegal laws that's making you complicit with illegal behavior. I mean, is that really the kind of thing that we want to encourage as a church? I don't think so.
Oh, no.
So if you go through Matthew 18, they refuse to repent. Maybe you got to find a different church. Maybe that's just the way that this is right now. Or hey, better yet, maybe start your own. Maybe we need to go back to having smaller churches and not have a bunch of big mega churches. This might be the actual wake-up call that we need within Christianity too.
Well, obviously, as a Catholic, I can't just go and start my own church.
That's the beauty of us Protestants.
It's got its features and it's got its bugs, because also the solution to every dispute is, well, screw you, I'm going to get the people that agree with me on this particular finer point and go start another church somewhere.
Yeah.
As opposed to actually talking it out and resolving. It's like, nope, I'm going to go plant this one over here. It's it's a it's got its good points, it's got its bad points.
Yeah.
um but yeah, I mean, absolutely, they need to be confronted. They need to be held to account to however much you can, and I agree. It's just kind of it's difficult, but I think people are getting there.
Yep.
And
I'm praying so.
Yeah, absolutely. And anyway, I think, gosh, we're up about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
My goodness. Well, we do tend to go a little long, so there's nothing wrong with that.
No, absolutely nothing wrong.
Anyway, we have yet to actually mention where you can find your book.
Yeah, so you can actually go to gatekeepersonline.com. If you go to our store there, use code Jeff at checkout, you get 10% off. It's always fun throwing the code out there. But yeah, I mean, I would recommend getting the book Church and State. Again, whether you're a Christian or not a Christian, I'll put that over here. But whether you're a Christian or not a Christian, it's really exposing the strategy of infiltration into every facet of our country. And it's just right now the last target, I believe, is Christianity and religion, and they're doing this systematically, and it's important that you guys understand that. So, and also too, it's a bunch of really great contributing authors. I mean, you got Pastor Greg Locke, who's kind of like the MAGA preacher that's out there all over the place. He's always invited to the White House and all that. We got Denise McAllister, who used to write for the Daily Wire and the Federalist. We got Pastor Kerry Gordon out in Iowa, he's the pastor in Iowa that all of the Republican nominees try to go to get his endorsement. He brings them over and they have dinner at his place, and he basically grills them. And then very rarely he actually gives that an endorsement, but he's really good. Did an entire chapter on the importance of the church supporting the Constitution of the United States. Nice. Really cool chapter. But yeah, a bunch of great contributing authors. So yeah, it was a fun project to put together.
Very cool. So, all right, Gatekeepers Online, go check it out, Church and State, buy it. And as always, Jeff, it's a pleasure to have you on. And I'll look forward to the next time.
Sounds like a plan.
In the meantime, everybody, get the book, read it, pray, figure out what it is that God needs you to do so you can keep